Talk a little bit about learned helplessness. I've talked on this channel about how I feel like inferior, incompetent, like I haven't fully transitioned into an adult. Like there's tons of things that I still can't or don't know how to do. For example, driving. I still, don't drive. I have a car, and I have uh, several times gotten my driver's permit, and I've gone to driving school, and I've practiced driving, but I've never actually taken the driving test. I've never felt ready for it. Um, and other things I constantly feel like I don't know how to do or can't do on my own. And I think part of the reason for this is this idea of learned helplessness. So growing up, my parents were somewhat abusive emotionally and physically, but at the same time they were very, very overprotective of me because I have cerebral palsy, because of my disability, um, and I don't entirely blame them, of course. Now that I'm a parent, I don't know if I could have handled their situation better coming from another country because they're immigrants, right, from Mexico and not speaking the language and not really knowing how to handle or how to deal with a child who has a disability. And I think a lot of what they did was they uh, were helicopter parents. They sheltered me and overprotected me um, almost to an extreme, right? They didn't let me do things on my own. They constantly like handed things to me and did things for me. And as a consequence, I think I never really had a chance to develop that self confidence that you have to develop when you're a child. Growing up, when you try things, kind of trial and errors, you try new things. Some things will fail and other things you'll succeed at. And that's kind of the whole trajectory, right, of developing your self worth and your self confidence is just trying and failing and knowing that you can do things on your own. And I feel like as a child growing up, and even as a teenager and as an adult now, I still live with them. I still don't drive. They do most of the cooking. And part of that is because we live with like a bunch of my other family members, and the kitchen can get crowded, and it's just easier to let them do the cooking. But I feel like I'm stuck. Like I never fully transitioned to a full grown adult, even though I'm 34 years old and I have a full time job as a speech therapist and I'm going through graduate school. But I think that's part of the reason, too, why I feel like an imposter. Um, and the imposter syndrome and the anxiety is real, and not to mention the depression, the ADHD, all these other things that I've talked about in my channel. And there's a bunch of different confounding factors, of course, right? Like, emotional neglect, trauma, all of these things that I've kind of talked about. But I think at the core is that learned helplessness and feeling like I can't do things on my own because I never really got a chance to experiment or to develop that confidence. And even though I have achieved many things throughout my life, like I've gotten an associate's degree, a certificate in graphic design, I have a bachelor's degree, I'm working on my master's degree, I've worked as a reading specialist, I'm working as a speech therapist. I have achieved things that I have set out to achieve, and yet I don't feel like they've really helped my confidence at all. Like you would think that all of these life experiences and achievements would help me kind of get out of that imposter syndrome mentality and understand that I am capable of achieving things and of doing things. And I yet somehow mentally and emotionally I still feel stuck. Um, so my advice as a parent, because I have a 10-year-old son, and I try my best to let him do things. So if in the rare event that he does see me cooking and he says, I want to help you, like I've bought him a set of knives that is essentially child-proof knives. Like it still will cut things, but it won't cut him. So I bought him that so he can help me cut lemons and like tomatoes and things. Or I asked my parents to allow him to let him help them when they ask, right? And I try my best to give him what I was never given, that sense of autonomy, that sense of independence, that even though he's a child, that he can um, learn that he is capable of doing things on his own, to a certain extent. Of course, there are things I still help him with, but even as young as 2, if your child wants to help you, like pour milk or something, it might make a mess, but still allow them to try and fail, and at least know that they tried, and the more that they practice, the better they'll get at it. But like, my advice as a parent and to other parents out there is, let your children try and fail, as difficult as it can be, because I sometimes still get the urge to be like a helicopter parent myself, and just I catch myself constantly saying, "Oh, be careful. You need to be more careful, or don't do that. I don't want you to get hurt." But I try to catch myself and stop myself in the midst of it, and just kind of provide as much support as I need to, while still stepping back and letting him do things on his own, which has not been easy by any means. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to overcome the imposter syndrome. I feel like no matter how much I set out to do and accomplish, that lingering feeling of I'm not good enough, I'm not on the same level as these other adults, is always there. And that, of course, adds to my social anxiety, my depression, and all of these other things. And I guess that's something that I can bring up with my therapist when I see her again next week. But I just wanted to talk about how I feel like that learned helplessness really ties into the imposter syndrome later on in life, that I have been feeling. Like, I'm great with kids. I feel confident in my work with kids. I feel confident in being able to make an impact in their lives, and to help them. But when it comes to socializing and interacting with other adults, I feel like I'm not quite at their level. And I've talked about this before. And it is such a debilitating feeling, right? To feel like I'm in a room full of other adults and professionals, and yet I still feel like I'm emotionally and mentally stuck, at the level of a child to some extent. I don't know if that makes sense, but um, if you have experienced that, and you deal with that, let me know in the comments down below. And if you have found anything that kind of has helped you. Like, I've tried different things, counseling, medication, even meditation, which I'm really not the best at, but I want to kind of get back into. Um, but again, that lingering syndrome, that lingering feeling of I'm not good enough, I can't do this, they are better than me, why am I even here? I don't belong here. No matter how much I seem to accomplish, just it just doesn't seem to go away, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better.